Welcome to this meeting of the Warren Astronomical Society. We are live at Cranbrook and hybrid via YouTube and Zoom. So, hi everyone. I'm President Bob Tremblay. Happy Global Astronomy Month, everyone. April is Global Astronomy Month. Tonight, our short talk will be about the planetarium app Stellarium by myself, and our feature talk will be the Bleeding Edge Telescope Making, a survey of what's possible by Tom Otvos. I hope I got his name right. Okay, do we have any first-time attendees tonight? No, I don't. Okay. So you can join a renew right there by that guy. If anyone wants a last lanyard, which I'm not wearing, bad Bob, you can also get one down here. Okay, let's do some roll call. We'll go through the ranks. Bob Tremblay, president.
Dale Teamy, editor.
David Borzinski, treasurer. Mark Kenzie, Jeff McLeod.
Maya Bognac.
Jim Wallace.
Tom Servant.
Tony Spiros.
Laura Lloyd. Dana Wong. Lois Team.
John Stiller.
All right. Hi, everyone. Let's see. Mark Kedzier is here. Okay, you can get wearables from him. They are available in our newsletter. You can see what's available. And stickers. We have stickers down here. We have stickers available. You can get them right there. I might actually have to walk away with a couple of those. We have a meeting of the Great Lakes Association of Astronomy Club on the second Tuesday of the month. If you're interested in helping plan astronomy at the beach or advertise astronomy at the beach, which they're really going to need this year since Brian Adams is not doing it anymore, we could use your help.
Tomorrow.
Yes. Oh God, I do this tomorrow. Oh man, my life.
7 or 6?
7 o'clock. Yeah. Gary Gathan, I don't know, some of you may remember remember Gary Gathan. Ken Burton called me and said that he passed away, and I don't have any other information on that. So I will get information out to the membership as soon as I find that out. Brother Guy Consolmagno has been confirmed as the speaker for Astronomy at the Beach, both Friday and Saturday. He and maybe some other members of the Vatican Observatory Foundation are going to be under the club tent at a table. So you'll be able to kibitz with Brother Guy for quite some time. International Dark Sky Week is April 21 through 28. And I got an email today. There's an astronomy night at Belle Isle on the 25th, on April 25th. So I'm probably going to be setting up a table again for that thing. And they're looking for telescopes. The Ford Amateur Astronomy Club Expo was held last Saturday, and it was kind of lightly attended. Like Jeff was surprised at how lightly attended it was.
Surprise.
Yeah, okay. He says it was a kind word. I was plugging the club at the table there, and I talked to a couple people and let them know that we have lectures, and they're like, will you come to my classroom? I'm like, yeah, so several of us will. So give me your information. So we need to do something better about letting the public know that we have speakers that will come and talk and set up telescopes at your site. I mean, I don't know what more we need to do. Maybe just on social media or something. I don't know. But anyway, Dale, what is up with First Vice President?
Hello, hello, everyone. Well, first of all, our next meeting is at Macomb on April 17. Our speaker will be Dr. Nicole Zellner. She's a professor of physics and astronomy at Albion College. Excellent speaker. Her topic will be the moon, what we know, and why we're going back. I'm sure that'll be a great presentation. Next month, when we're back here at Cranbrook, I'm going to be giving the short presentation because no one else is volunteering. So I'll be talking about phases of the moon. And by the way, please volunteer. We need more speakers. I'll be giving, that's the short presentation. And then someone that our president knows named Deanna Weibel will give the main presentation, which has a rather long and interesting title, which is, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream. Potential impacts of cosmic vistas on spacefaring culture. You gotta come if you want to find out what that's all about. Beyond that, as always, I am looking for speakers, both short presentations and long. Okay, thank you.
I did not know that he got Dina Weibel. She was interviewed by Brother Guy for one of his pod, and I released a podcast with her last week on the Vatican Observatory site. So you can see Brother Guy talking to her, and she'll explain some of the cool stuff. One of the really cool things that she said was that she talked to an Apollo astronaut. She can't tell you who it is because of reasons, but you can probably figure it out because he was one of the few people that was on the command module by himself. And he was alive a couple of years ago, so that list is small. But she said he looked out. It was on the dark side of the moon, and he was looking out into space, and he'd seen more stars than he could believe he was seeing, and it was practically a religious experience, which is why she's talking with Brother Guy. But so she was pretty good. She's a very entertaining speaker. Yes. Yes, I will put the link. It goes VaticanObservatory.org/podcast, and it's the latest one there, Dina Weibel. It's an anthropologist at the Vatican Observatory is the name of the title. So, okay, Riyadh, our second VP, what is going on at Stargate?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. Last open house, it was on March 22nd. We started out about almost 7 o'clock. And we started by looking at Jupiter. Then we looked at some deep sky objects and double stars. Jeff was out there as well. He assembled the 22-inch telescope, and he was also using it out on the field. Tina helped out with the crowds, and Dale Hallenbaugh was also out there with Scope. There were a couple other scopes. So it looks like a lot of people are finding us through Meetup, which seems to be, the crowd seems to get larger and larger, which is a good thing. So the next open house we're going to have, which is not our standard one, is this coming Saturday, April 12th. And this is for statewide astronomy night, starting at 7. So if it's going to be clear, we may have an awful lot of people showing up. So anybody who would like to come out and help, you're more than welcome to do so. Come on out and enjoy the night sky with us, and maybe help out with the crowds. The next open house, our regular open house, is going to be April 26th, starting at 8. So we have kind of a busy month, looks like, right now, which is a nice thing to have. And we hope we'll have some clear skies. We've been lucky so far. We've been observing a lot of objects through the nights. We've had a couple of nights that were not so good, but other than that, yeah, it's been pretty good. So hopefully we'll see everybody out there on the 12th and also on the 26th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Riyadh. David, Treasurer, what is going on with the Treasury? We have a first timer on the YouTube chat, so hi there.
Okay, so for the treasury report, checking account, we've got $23,516. Our credit card, we do have a balance on there of $688. $188 was for the yearly payment of the PO box. And $500 was for donation to the Michael D. Stafford Freshwater Forum Fund.
Yay.
The PO box, just some FYI about that. For a long time, this was being paid for by a personal credit card. That's now been changed to the WAS credit card. We're going to be doing something similar to that for the Meetup website. PayPal, we've got $966 in there. cash box, we got about $237. Credit card reader, that's still in process, so stay tuned, more news to come. I do have a couple calendars on the floor there,
Notice that.
$20 each. We have some stickers, $1 a piece, 7 stickers for $5.
Discount them. Maybe we should discount
What do you got, Dale? Yes.
You mentioned a $500 donation. Could you explain that a little bit from the best of
Let's see, so, Michael D. Stafford is with, Cranbrook, and he's retiring from Cranbrook after 20 years. So we thought we would donate, to this fund that is in memory of him.
Yeah, he set that fund up, I believe.
Yeah.
So we donated a.
That money doesn't go to him, it
Yeah.
goes to something at Cranbrook.
Right, yep. So also as an FYI, so far this year, we've donated $1,000 in total. Not only for $500 for this freshwater fund, but also for the scholarship fund at Macomb Community College. So in total, it's $1,000 we donated.
Thank you. All right, Charlie, what is going on with our secretary? Oh, he's bringing a bag up. Well.
In the bag. Yeah,
Well. Hello, everybody. My name is Charles Strackline, and I'm the secretary of this fine and illustrious Warren Astrological Society. And what I have in the bag here are name tags, probably about 40 of them, and I'll set them out at lunchtime. And you can peruse and see if yours is here. And if you'd like a name tag and don't have one yet, you can email me at secretary at warrenastro.org. Thank you. Alrighty. All right, Jeff, what's going on with outreach? I don't know. I said it to speaker and it stayed on read for some reason. I don't know why.
All right, real quick, wait, which hand? Behind me here, where am I? Where? Yeah, I'll take it. I think that's southern Jupiter. All right, for those of you that aren't aware, he's always somewhere. All right, where's the camera? Look at how much outreach. Why does it do this? It has to. I'm gonna draw a smiley face on it next time, and then it'll do it. If I move it around quick enough. I got a whole sticky note. Woo! All right, so real quick on the 4 Club swap meet. I don't know if it's really outreach, but it was a good time. Is it broken? Can you hear me? They can hear me. I touched something. So I don't want to be an alarmist, but I think telescopes might be going the way of the VCR. You got them, nobody wants them. What's going on here? It's like nobody has anything. Nobody bought anything. All right.
Well, that's not true. We got rid of one.
We got rid of one of our telescopes from the Dob Shed Riyadh. One scope down. Several. Actually, we sold 2. Riyadh, that refractor's gone. You know what refractor I'm talking about? It's gone. Anyway, inside joke. Yeah, join the Stargate committee and you'll know what I'm talking about. So upcoming stuff, April 24th, I'll be talking at the Ford Club. It's my Apollo lecture where I get all gussied up as an Apollo engineer. It's a good time if you've not seen it. We're tired. Oh yeah, Ben Black. Who's seen it? April 25th, Riyadh already mentioned Belle Isle Astronomy Night. It's not the best scene conditions, but it's a really cool time. It's a crowd that doesn't usually get access to telescopes like that. Yes, it is. I think I'll be able to make that. I'm not sure. And also, if you are a dedicated observer, I think it's a good challenge. What can you see from Belle Isle? I have seen the Andromeda Galaxy from Belle Isle. Wasn't the best Milky or Andromeda I've ever seen, but we got to give people a good cross section of astronomy. Like, you know, sometimes it's difficult and it's not necessarily how beautiful the thing is that you're looking at, but the pursuit of the object. April 26th, Dale Parton's going to be speaking at a library in Rochester. That's a private event, so don't try to go to it, but he's speaking on our behalf. And then Riyadh also covered April 12th, Swan at Stargate. So 2 opportunities this month for clear skies at Stargate. Yeah, we don't do that all too often. I think that's all I have. If you would like to buy an older LX200 that might be missing just a handful of pieces, let me know. I've got 2.
What a salesman. Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Hey, Bob.
Pardon me? Yes?
I have something that I think is somewhat outreach related. Maybe perhaps an anecdote I can share. So while traveling recently, we were on a cruise and I met someone while I was taking some photos, actually of Venus and Mercury. We met a flat earther, and my wife and I successfully convinced her that the earth is round. So that was sort of a bit of an outreach. My wife said, "Hey, you need to mention that." It's like, "Oh, I forgot last time." So it was an accomplishment.
As far as I know, we've never had.
Yeah, this is actually the first time I've ever heard of somebody changing. Wow.
I think she was a bit agnostic, wasn't sure, but I showed her the pictures I was taking of Venus right then and how it was a crescent. And I showed her a video of a little time lapse of Jupiter spinning that I said I took this photo myself with some moons there, and you can see the moon spinning. So I don't know. So it was, yeah, it's sort of interesting. So it's sort of an outreach, personal outreach.
I like when Jeff was mentioning the other day that you know, among flat earthers, there's no agreement about, is there a dome? Is there not a dome? Is there water above it? Is there an ice shield? Is there all of the rest of the planets are just biomes on the other side of the ice shield? I'm like, wow.
Bob still can't explain.
That's huge. Yeah. Jeff is commenting about the coincidence that the Earth is 1 astronomical unit away from the sun. That's a real thing. Save me. Shalia, anything to report on publications? I saw you come online. Yeah. Oh, and she's not. Well, okay. The newsletter is up. He does it. It's awesome. You should read it. Okay, if you need to contact us at boardoranastro.org. And right now I'm going to turn the floor over to David Levy, our guest from Arizona.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're doing good.
Okay, there is a bright comet in the sky right now. But it's currently getting brighter. It was discovered by Swan a few weeks ago and could become as bright as 5th magnitude at the end of April. So we'll be watching for that. For my quotation today, I'd like to quote from Senator Carl Schurz. He gave a lecture in Faneuil Hall in Boston on the eve of the Civil War in 1859, and he said, "Ideals are like stars. You will not succeed in touching them with your hands. But like the seafaring man on the desert of waters, you choose them as your guides, and following them, you will reach your destiny." Thank you very much, and back to you, Bob.
All right, speaking of the new comet discovery. Ready for the meeting today, yeah. Now there's the comet that David was mentioning. They've got some images of it there, it's on spaceweather.com, and there's another image of it. So, and they're saying that this should be visible easily in small telescopes, so it's Swan 25F. Go for it, guys. No idea. Oh, somewhere. I just found out about it while this afternoon. I haven't done an update. I don't know where it is, but I can figure it out. Swan SWAN 25F. Okay, I think I mentioned last time that there was a update on the moons of Saturn, but I didn't have exact numbers. So in March of last month, astronomers announced the discovery of 128 new moons orbiting Saturn, bringing the total up to 274. This was done using ground-based telescopes, not analyzing Cassini data. Well, that's pretty cool. Asteroid update, we're over 1,000,004. We're up 6,000 from last month, 6,800. And near Earth objects, we're up 319, 38,000. Exoplanets, we're up 28, not many, but it's 5,800. And candidates, we're up 153. That's 75-25. They discovered that they found orbiting Barnard star, the closest single star of the Earth. Several exoplanets there, and one of them is a super Earth in the habitable zone of a nearby red dwarf, making the planet an excellent candidate for atmospheric studies. So exoplanets are cool. So on spaceweather.com there, T Corona Borealis, we're still waiting for it to go nova. It's fluctuating a little bit, but it's a variable, so it's going to do that. This was on spaceweather.com today. Said you may have heard of the 11-year sunspot cycle, but what about the centennial Stellarium cycle? It's a slow modulation of the solar cycle, which suppresses some spot numbers every 80 to 100 years. It may have been responsible for the remarkable weakness of the solar cycle 24, which was 2012 to 2013. Research was published in Journal of Space Weather suggests that the minimum has just passed, and so the solar cycle for the next 50 years should become increasingly intense, as if this one wasn't increasingly intense enough. So we've got a whole bunch of sunspots. There's our sunspots for today. That's the last few hours. Over on the sidebar, it said that we've had sunspots continuously since 2021 with only one spotless day in 2022. So we've had a lot of sunspots. So if you're looking on Facebook, you can check out CME alerts and the solar activities group. They do announcements of flares. They've been posting a lot of X-class flares lately, and the solar activity group has the amateurs with just some amazing pictures. Riyadh, double star. What, are we gonna be doing that again?
Oh,
What
absolutely.
What are our favorites this next coming up?
Yeah, well, last open house, we looked at Castor, which was wonderful, but we also looked at Sirius, and we still have a chance to look for it again, looking for Sirius B this coming maybe Saturday and also on the 26th. When I was looking for it the other day, I mean, there was a chance of maybe seeing what looked like it was Sirius B, but it was very, very difficult. And some of the visitors participated in kind of hunting for it, and some of them think they saw something, but they're not 100% sure. So it keeps us busy. So we'll do it again.
If anyone wants to start a special interest group, just let us know. Be very open to that. Do we have any observing reports or astrophotos? What do you got?
I can share a few.
Yeah, somebody.
Somewhere next to Andromeda,
Pre-dawn Pegasus Andromeda.
where it's like.
I mean, if I'd have known about it a little earlier, I could have imported it into what I'm going to be showing tonight, Stellarium, because you can do that, but I didn't find out about it later. Any other astrophotos?
Bob, I got a couple I could share.
Oh, please do.
These are all taken with my Sea Star, or one of them, or one or the other. I took both of them out to Stargate. So I actually took this at the Stargate when we were there taking pictures live. This is, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Got the M81, M82. M42. This was using the new equatorial mode, so it tracks a little better. 30-second subframes. This is actually 2 nights worth. I took some while I was at the Stargate, and then I took another evening, a couple hours before it set. Turned out pretty good. I didn't do any external processing. This is exactly out of the Sea Star, so I think this is pretty decent. Markarian's chain. It's a little cloudy there. Let's see if I get any others. This one was a little earlier in the month. The moon was up, so it's there's a little bit of color differentiation there. And we have the Rosette Nebula. So that's it.
What kind of skies? We did those at Stargate, or what kind of skies were those?
I did half of those at Stargate, which is about Bortle 5, and 3 of them were at my house, which is about the same. I'm in Bortle 5 as well. So it depends on what the phase of the moon, how clear the photo is. So sometimes.
All right, no other reports for astrophotos? All right, well, Dale, I guess it's my turn.
Oh. We have a speaker for our short presentation who, doesn't really need an introduction. He's standing right next to me, our president. He's a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, a podcast host, and factotum, whatever that is. You'll have to tell us.
Jack of all trades. It's an old word for jack of all trades.
For the Vatican Observatory Foundation, which is their employer, right? It's on the board of the Great Lakes Association of Astronomy Clubs, which hosts astronomy at the beach. Quite impressive set of things he's doing. Tonight, he's here to tell us about some software, which is free and get anything you want on the internet called Stellarium. It's going to go over some of the basics of how to use it for those who don't know how.
All right. So it's long as not your app. I'm going to show you how you get it first. All right. Yes. I'm not. Oh. Testing.
There you go.
All right. I'll put that right in front of me. All right, this is Stellarium. If you go to stellarium.org, you can get the Stellarium app. That's where it is. It's open source, so it's available for PC, Mac, and Linux. And there's also a web-based version, which is right here. It's a very small subset of the functionality of the installable app, but the cool thing about this version is it allows you to log your observations. You can log into the app and log it, which is pretty cool. So when they come out with updates, they're announced right here, and there's one from a couple days ago, which I actually didn't know about. They're switching to Gaia DR3 data, so the star positions are going to be more accurate, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. They've added more sky cultures and stuff like that. But so you get the app from here, and it is, run the app now. Stop that share and share the app. All right, so this is Stellarium, and that is the version I got. What is that? Go away. There we go. All right. I didn't know you could do that. Why is it doing that? All right, so when you start up Stellarium, you're looking south from where you are. So, and you can drag it with a mouse. Get rid of that annotation there. So this doesn't help us right now. You can't really see the sky. So you hit the date and time, and you can set the date and time to whatever you want for like 1950 all the way to like 2100 or something like that. So let's just get it to dark here. So there's nighttime. How do I get rid of these annotations? There we go. I'm going to stop that share and reshare because I don't want those annotations there. Oh, yeah. All right, so this is the sky at 2200, 11 o'clock tonight. And you can, there's a menu bar down here. Wow, this thing's just in my way. All right, let's lock the menu bar down. Okay, this is the main menu, and things you can do with it is you can like turn on the constellations, constellation labels, and constellation artwork. Now this is the Western artwork. You can go into settings. Big screen. The sky culture, these are what sets the artwork and stuff. And these guys have actually won awards for the sky culture. You can go, there's all the different sky cultures. So you want Chinese, Greek, Arabic, and the people that have created these are people like you and I that have an interest in this, and you can create this and they can change the sky culture. I believe Diane Hall did a presentation on this a while back. There's just an absolute ton of them. You want Native American, Navajo, Maya, and it goes through an explanation of all these. Yes.
Fix the constellations for all.
So the one that I use is Modern H.A. Ray from the book The Stars, which are really cool, and it's very cool. Now, the other things you can do are, let's turn the artwork off. You can put the grids on so you can see where you're looking. That's very nice. On the other grid. If your atmosphere is annoying you, you can turn it off and see what it would be like if you were in a really, really dark sky site and didn't have any atmosphere. If the ground is bothering you, you can turn the ground off. One of the things that's really cool is if you have the grid on, you can yes.
Yes.
So you can do, yes, that is the moon. So let's click on the moon. Spacebar centers it. You can zoom in. That is a live view. I can pause. One of the cool things you can do is, where's Jupiter? Let's turn those off. It's Jupiter. Center that. And this is really accurate. And I know, let's pause time. I happen to know that on the 11th, pardon me? Is it what? No, yeah, this is right now. This is 2200. So I'm going to switch to the 11th. 11th. And look at that. There is a shadow transit of I believe, Io, and you can accelerate time. Oh, heavens. I lost you, but
Have to lock on its position.
yeah, there's center. I did that. Hello. And there we go. You can kind of get an animation of that. You can take videos of this too, but you'll see the time. So I was going to come out. Next time. Don't center it exactly. It doesn't play right. Well, all right, I won't be doing that. But anyway, so you can check to see when there's going to be a shadow transit of Jupiter. It shows you meteor showers. Let's see, do I see any satellites? Satellites turned on? Yes. I'm really surprised I'm not seeing satellites. Usually you can just see just a ton of satellites in here. So, right, so I said that when you start up the app, it shows you where you are from your current position. It figures out where you are from the internet, GPS, or what have you. Got a bunch of features for sky. You can take images of it. You can turn stars on and off. You can change the atmosphere. You can select single constellations, which is great for doing screenshots for things like that. Let's see what else. You can control your telescope, which I have never done, but this thing will allow you to control your telescope. It's got red eye mode for using it outside, which is awful nice. Let's see what else. Configuration window. Let's go to plugins. It's got a ton of plugins. It's got a scripting language that it's pretty easy to use. And one of the things that I had was the Messier. Who was it? Oh, control, solar system editor, there's the telescope control, meteor showers. There's scripts. I'm looking in the wrong place. Messier Marathon. So what you can do is, I was using this. I was at astronomy at the beach. I had my screen in front of me, right? And it was cloudy. And then Jonathan comes up and says, "You're the only guy doing astronomy here." I was showing people this, but let's run a Messier tour. This is a script. This. So this will just take you, I think, through a random selection of different Messier objects and where they are. I'm going to see a tree here. Oh, yeah, there's it. Oh, that's cool. It shows you what it looked like. You can select what ocular you have and that kind of stuff, and it will show you a representation of what you're going to see through your telescope. So let's click that. Oh, you're not going to quit. All right. Okay, great. I actually don't know how to stop that. So I'm going to restart the application. Exoplanets. They've got exoplanets. You want to see where the exoplanets are? Go back to sharing it. Good heavens. Okay, going down the other thing, you can set whatever location you are on the planet. It figures out where you are from the internet or GPS, but you can set whatever location that you want. So you want to see the southern skies from down there. There you go. And as I said, you can set the date and time for 50 years in the past. When was that? When was the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction? That was 2021 in December. I think it was December. All right, so you said you can set the date and time wherever you want. One of the really cool things you can do, there's a satellite. Yep, what is it? Doink, doink. It's unsurprising it's a Starlink.
Starlink.
Where's the other ones? Well, let's zoom. I wasn't zoomed in far enough. They're all. I've been in this thing where they've just been all over the place. That's Xinyan 6. That's a Chinese one. So yeah, and you've got just an absolute ton of options. Now it's got a solar system editor in here where you can set the landscape, the background landscape. I've got the background set for something with trees here, but you can set it to open ocean. You can set it to Uranus or the surface of the sun. I don't know why you want to do that, but if you want to get rid of the ground, you can. Now for taking pictures, one of the things it has in here, which is kind of nice, is for solar system objects, you can increase the size of the moon by default. So because it is so small when you're in the sky like that. So for screenshots, that's a little better for increasing the size like that. I'll be showing this in a future one, but I'm not going to do it now. It's got an absolute ton of sky surveys. I'm not going to click on any of these because it'll download them and it will take forever. And I'm not going to do that through Cranbrook. I'm going to get screenshots of them. But one of the coolest things I've seen in here is one of these Japanese infrared surveys where it mapped the dust of the sky on the background, and you could literally see the dust clouds we're moving through. It is just amazing. So that's a cool feature. Let's see what else. How am I doing on time, Dale? I don't know either. 42. Well, I started at 7:30, so I got about 3 more minutes. All right, so configuration window. What else do we got? Let's see. Information, you can set all these things that you can see. Time, you can set the it's got just a ton of tools. Some of these things I have no idea what they do. There's so much stuff there. Astronomical calculations. If you want to find an ephemeris of it, will draw the picture of retrograde motion and that kind of stuff. If you want to find occultations and stuff, it can find that. So it's got this large thing of calculations that you can do, and then just go to that date and time and see that. So it's really, really cool. As for display, I believe it has the ability to be project like a fisheye in a planetarium, which I would like to see. Other than that, let's see. You can search on practically anything. If you can import new data from the Minor Planet Center. So that comet that showed up, we can go into here and import that. You can do it by name or just import everything that's new and take forever. But well, yeah, this thing, it's a free, excuse me, it's a free planetarium app, PC Mac Linux, with a web-based version that works on your phone or on here. And the phone version does, that bit, which is really cool. And other than that, any questions? Yes. PC Mac Linux, yep. iPad. There's an Android app for it. I'll find it out. I believe there is an i app for it. Let's find out. Yeah, I would too. Go to the Stellarium website and find out. Web Mac OS. It doesn't say. All right, so let's do this. Do Google Foo. How is it? iPad? iOS? Yep. iPhone, iPad, so yeah, it works on all platforms. Yeah, I use this all the time. It is really awesome. If you're going to be doing an outreach event in a couple weeks, this is fantastic for just going to that date, seeing what the sky looks like, printing out a couple maps. When it comes to printing out the maps, you can set this so that the sky is white and the lines are black, and you'll get a map that is nice and printable. But I said I've covered that much of what this app can do. But when it comes to, it's free, it works really, really well, and you can just explore around the sky very easily with it.
What, if you attach it to your telescope?
Yes.
Be able to
It's
find the-
got telescope control.
Like that.
I have never done that. I've never actually seen it done, but it's right there. It's got it built in.
Bob, how do they make money on it?
Good question. It's open source. I don't actually know how they make money. They may have a donation link on their website. Let's see. I don't know.
Have you ever seen a commercial pop up?
Nope. I've never seen an ad, never seen a commercial. Collaboration, acknowledgement. Let's see. I'm pretty sure.
To our collective.
Pretty sure they do have that.
Maybe it's just magic.
Collaborate.
Yeah. So yeah, in the latest one right here, the latest version right here, they thank their volunteers and testers. So if you want to test these things, test a new version of this, they'll let you do it. I just don't know why I haven't asked them that. So anyway, any other questions? Go out and get Stellarium. It's free and it works on this thing. It's very cool. And I'll be doing a second one of these. I'll be showing you some other more advanced things. I really want to get into some of the sky survey stuff because holy mackerel, there's a lot of stuff there. And I want to show you the addition of like that comet and that kind of things you can track, find out something new, find out where it is. All right. So let's take a 20-minute break. It is 7:47, so that would be 10 after 8. So go do a bio, go get a munchie, go get a drink, and reconvene in 20 minutes. 5-minute warning. 5-minute warning.
Talking to years old men. Can someone explain to me a good way to have men organically come up to you in Manhattan? I feel like in a group of girls, it's hard for them. I don't know. What am I gonna do? Like really, one thing. Just because they're hot, over 6 feet tall, big, sexy, that we're just gonna go running to you whenever you call. Oh, come here, baby. I want to see you. Come over.
Okay, we're active here.
You can put it anywhere you want.
Yeah, you can, but I mean, on the outside, it will stay.
If you want.
You don't know?
Pardon me?
We have him ready to go.
I don't know, we gotta get in contact with him. Where's he?
Well, he's there.
Okay. Oh, I'm fine.
Do your magic.
All right. Yeah. All right, that's fine. All right, everyone, let's take our seats, get ready. We're gonna start our feature talk here.
Get his.
Where I don't have it.
So we'll share his
I
screen.
don't know.
Ask him.
Where is it? Where's which one is it?
Tom, are
Hey,
you?
Tom, ready to go, Tom?
Yes, I am. Do
All
you want me
right,
to share my screen and so you can
please,
test?
yeah, I will allow you to share it. Here, hold on.
I'll turn on my video too, so I'm not so anonymous.
Dale, can you share?
I think he's about to come on.
Yeah.
5 a.m. wake
There you
up.
go.
There you
No.
There it is.
You want to make it so the
Can you
screen?
see my screen?
Yes.
For some reason, those Zoom's got a big bar here that I can't get rid of. How do I hide that? Maybe I could just do this. How's that? Can you see a full screen video there or full screen
Yeah.
presentation?
Yep.
It's full screen. I can see it.
Perfect.
Is that good enough?
That'll do.
All right, all right.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so our main speaker is ready to go. Tom Otvos, am I saying that correctly, Tom?
That's right. Yep. That's
Okay.
right.
Is a software architect. I don't even know what that means. Shows you how good I am at software. And says he's been in and out of amateur astronomy since high school. And he's made a number of astronomical devices. Tom, you might want to spend just a minute enumerating some of those for us. And he's actively involved in the Oregon Scope Werks. And yet he's in Toronto. So I don't know what that story is. He says it's a group of enthusiasts that are pushing the envelope of what is possible in this exciting hobby. And as I said, he lives just outside Toronto, Ontario, which skies there must be about as bad as they are here. His topic tonight, bleeding edge telescope making. Tom, please tell us your story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, bleeding edge telescope making. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the leading edge or bleeding edge techniques and things that we're working on, or a number of people are working on, to really push what's possible for amateur telescope making. And the reason that I picked this cover image is that bleeding edge sometimes leads to catastrophic failures, such as this one, which was a mirror that I worked on for about 18 months and was about to finish when it tipped out of my star test rig and fell onto the ground and broke into two pieces. So bleeding edge is sometimes, fraught with disaster. But hopefully some of the stuff that I'm showing you tonight will kind of kindle your curiosity if you've never done anything with respect to ATM before, or if you've dabbled in it, but want to know, a little bit more about what some other people are doing, then this talk is for you. As for the Oregon Scope Werks, yes, it's a group that's largely based in Oregon, but it's got members, all around the world, and really the only criterion for for being a member is that you're willing to not necessarily accept the status quo and try and push the boundaries of whatever aspect of telescope making you happen to be interested in. So they accept members from Toronto. So, for those of you that are observational astronomers, or maybe new to astronomy entirely, a very valid question to ask is, why make telescopes at all? And so I think the ATM community, no question, is smaller than it was, decades ago. But by the same token, I think that, in recent years, it's actually seen a little bit of a resurgence, and we correspond with some ATMs, that are like teenagers or early 20s, so it's definitely caught the interest of the younger generation as well, not just necessarily, graybeards like myself. But so why would you want to make a telescope? Well, I mean, there's just the sheer satisfaction of making, a precise scientific instrument with your hands. There's something extremely cool about that. The things that you can see with something that you've created with your own hands, it really can be quite breathtaking, the first time you do it. Another reason would be just out of curiosity or wanting to kind of innovate within the space. Maybe you've made a telescope, but you want to kind of, kind of fill a niche that, that isn't currently filled, and you want to try your hand at something different. That's definitely, a motivation for some people. But I think by far the most compelling reason to make a telescope is that you want to make something to your specific needs. Typically, ATMs are trying to kind of meet whatever criteria they happen to have for their personal use case. Whether it's to create something that's highly portable, maybe they're going on a trip and they want to make a travel scope, as an example that actually has come up, in the last several weeks, within the Oregon Scope Werks. Or or you want to kind of push the envelope in terms of what you can see in your particular location, for whatever reason. So tailoring a telescope to your specific needs is probably the most compelling reason why people, take up ATM. One reason that is most decidedly not a reason to build a telescope is to save money. Maybe back in the day, in the 60s and the 70s, when it was a little bit more expensive to buy a commercial telescope because, you didn't have cheap Chinese equipment, that was high quality Chinese equipment, in the market. And so you couldn't afford something commercial, then you would potentially save, quite a bit of money by making your own. Certainly my original one, that kind of fit the bill. But in this day and age, with the market as saturated as it is with high quality instruments from overseas, cost savings is not the reason, unless you're talking about like really, really large aperture telescopes where even commercially it's cost prohibitive. But generally speaking, for your average average amateur telescope, cost savings should not be a motivator for making a telescope. So just to kind of give a scope for what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to give a very, very abridged and whirlwind tour of ATM history, just to kind of give a little bit of context for the space. But then I'm going to dive into some of the modern advances in this space, and I'm kind of dividing it up into three separate categories. There's advances in construction techniques, like how to actually put the telescopes together. Then there's specific advances in actually making telescope mirrors, and also a very important area, which is optical testing. How do you know when your optics are good enough? And so, there are lots of modern advances in that. And then I want to finish up by just kind of blue skying a little bit on, where I think things are heading. And I don't profess to be, a total expert in this, but this is just sort of the things that I'm observing. Certainly things that are itches that I want to personally scratch if I had unlimited time, which I don't. But so just to kind of whet your appetite for where I think things are going to be going. So just to, again, have a very, very brief history of amateur telescope making, basically in the beginning, everyone was an ATM, and that was out of necessity. We had people like Galileo and Newton and Herschel who all made their own instruments because they didn't have the benefit of, a big, like already established space, so they made their own, devices to meet their specific needs. And so, getting back to, tailoring the telescope, for your personal use case, in this case, there weren't any telescopes at all. And so, they had very specific use cases that they needed to meet. So top left is, Galileo's famous telescope. He was like the first guy to point, a telescope-like device up into the sky. And one of his early innovations was actually to add an extra lens into the system, because the original telescope that was used for nautical reasons, I guess, would be inverting the image. And so by adding an extra lens, he was able to actually correct the image. On in the lower left is Newton's famous telescope. And where he was going was with this was that the observation was that lens-based refracting telescopes had chromatic aberration due to the lenses refracting the light. And so his innovation here was to try and avoid this chromatic aberration by making a telescope with mirrors. And so this is his famous telescope here. It was actually a 2-inch mirror, as I understand it, but it was stopped down to 1.3 inches, and it was an f4.8. So a very small device, but it was to help him prove his optical theories, on refraction. And then on the right-hand side, you've got William Herschel's 20-foot telescope. In those days, the 20-foot was not about aperture, it was about the length of the thing. So this was 20 feet long. The actual aperture of this was 18 inches. And he actually had an even larger one, a 40-foot, which was 49 inches, I believe, in aperture. So monster telescope. But this one proved to be, one of his workhorse telescopes. And you can see on the scaffolding here, there's like a little let me see. I don't know if you can see. Oh no, I can't do my mouse. Just on the scaffolding, by the tube opening, you can see a little stool. And one of the things that Herschel did was, because the mirrors that he was making were made out of speculum, so they were metal mirrors, he wanted to maximize the amount of light that he could capture. And so he didn't even have a secondary mirror. And so what he was doing was he was focusing so that he would like look into the optical and the opening of the telescope and have the image focus there. So these are guys that that were doing things out of necessity to kind of push their own personal boundaries for what they wanted to achieve. So later, though, some people became ATMs purely out of curiosity, and this series of images here on the left is the very first. It's the invitation to the very first Stellafane conference. And so, if you know anything about Stellafane, it's an annual conference of telescope makers. It's in Springfield, Vermont. And it's been going every year since 1926. So it's coming up very soon on its 100th anniversary. The actual Springfield Telescope Makers organization, I think, just had their 100th anniversary. I think it was in 2024. But at any rate, this was the first time, that a group of telescope makers kind of got together and talked shop. Also around this time was a series of articles in Scientific American called The Backyard Astronomer, authored by Albert Ingalls and Russell Porter. And it was a series of articles on telescope making and optics and that sort of thing. And those series of articles ultimately morphed into a very famous series of books, which is on the right-hand side there, Amateur Telescope Making. It's a series of 3 books, actually. And it's been reprinted a gajillion times. And, and for the longest time was the Bible for telescope making. And that sort of, kept got people into the hobby and kind of kept them going for a good, I don't know, 50 years, I'd say. But then later still, some people became ATMs out of purely the love of showing people the sky. And very famous person, John Dobson, who you've obviously, I'm sure you've heard of at this point. His thing was basically building telescopes, setting them up on the sidewalk, and showing people the sky. And and one of the cool things about what he did from the ATM standpoint was he made the most rudimentary telescopes imaginable, made out of cardboard or shingles, very, very, shingles to hold the secondary, cardboard for the mirror cell, sonotube for the actual, telescope assembly, and very, very simple alt-az mounts, which we now know as the Dobsonian mount. And you can see a bunch of Dobsonians kind of lined up on the roadway there in the bottom right. And so, he not only, wanted people to see the sky, but he wanted to empower people to be able to see it for themselves. And there's some great videos on YouTube of him polishing and figuring mirrors. It's like really, really inspirational to just see how, by your bootstraps, you just kind of build these massive devices. And you can see in the top right, the telescope that he's moving around there, I think that's like a 24-inch scope. So big, big scopes. And this was his kind of contribution to ATM. So with that, like super, whirlwind tour here, I want to jump into where we are now with respect to telescope making. And as I said earlier, what I want to do is I'd like to break it up into a number of different categories, from construction to mirrors to testing. So back, in the 60s, there were a very famous series of booklets actually, published by Edmund Scientific. I still have them on my bookshelf, in my office here, on how to grind mirrors and how to make the actual telescopes. And back in that time, your telescope mount, as you can see, was all made with pipe fittings. That this was kind of like the DIY equatorial mount if you lived anywhere around 45 degrees latitude. But it allowed you to sort of get a tracking telescope. And these telescopes were typically quite small, though. The target was often like a 6-inch f7 or 6-inch f8. Apparently, one of the requirements was that you had to grind your mirror in dress slacks and shirt sleeves that you can roll up past your elbows, and do it in loafers. But I did exactly this without the dress slacks. And I did my first 6-inch mirror, using the techniques in these booklets. But nowadays, if you look at, if you just do a quick Google search of home-built telescopes, you'll see that Dobson had a huge influence on the way telescopes look now. And so, there's like a ton of different sizes of scopes that all have similar characteristics. You can see many of them are sonotubes, these big cardboard tubes that are used to cast concrete piers. And all of them have the Dobsonian mount. Probably some of them even have LP albums for their bearings, which was in the original Dobsonian mount documentation. The ground ring, the bearing for that was supposed to be an LP album. Certainly, I used what did I use? TV Hits. One of the KTEL albums for TV theme songs was what I used. So you can see that Dobson had a huge influence in the way telescopes look now. And so if you go to a star party, you're going to see lots of telescopes that look, sort of kind of like this. But having said that, there are lots of lots of opportunities to innovate within this space, and still kind of take into consideration, or to learn from the lessons that John Dobson was promoting. And so one of the main trends that you'll see, and in fact you can see in some of these here, are the move from like a sonotube based optical tube, to something that's truss based. And so lots of effort is going on right now in different types of truss systems, or even string-based systems, or what I'm going to call Zen-based telescopes. And all of these, and I'll expand on that in a sec. But all of these are in aid of having a higher degree of portability. As you can imagine, one of these, big long yard cannons is very, very difficult to fit into your car and move to a dark sky site. Whereas something that's truss-based or string-based or Zen-based, they're all with the goal of making your telescopes highly portable. So just as an example, I had mentioned travel scopes earlier. This is an awesome, awesome travel scope by a Dutch astronomer, Roel Weyenberg. Hopefully, I'm not butchering his name. But this is a really cool. So this is a 10-inch telescope, but you can see how minimal it is. There's very minimal truss structure between the mirror cell and the upper tube assembly. And you can see that the rocker bearings are very, very minimal, and all of this is intended to fit into this case that just like collapses down. Very, very innovative, very, very cool, and a number of people are innovating in this space to try and make as minimal a travel scope as possible, while still getting as much aperture as possible. Obviously you can make a very small telescope, if you're not willing to, have a very large aperture. But the trick here is, how do you get as much light gathering capability as you can, and yet still have something that could potentially fit in an overhead luggage compartment, or, under the seat in front of you. String telescopes are another innovation. The design is called tensegrity, and I don't know if it was invented by Don Peckham, but it's certainly championed by Don Peckham. And the idea here is that the trusses that you see here are merely to hold the strings, so they're just for setting up the dimensions of your telescope, and all of the weight bearing is done by tensioning those strings. And the strings are not in like super tight, like they're not guitar string tight. So the idea is that the geometry and the strings are just done in such a way that the whole thing supports itself. And so you can see on the left-hand side here, Rob Brown, who's actually, one of the members of Oregon Scope Works. That's his 12-inch tensegrity designed scope. And so the things in red, the strings in are red bowstrings, I believe they're archery bowstrings, and the black tubes are merely to separate and support the strings. On the right-hand side, on the upper right is one of Don Peckham's tensegrity designs. Again, you can see it's just like super minimal, and you can appreciate that this thing would just collapse down into next to nothing and be highly, highly portable, and very, very easy to set up in the field. There's a number of varieties of this design in the lower right. And if you search for tensegrity designs, you'll see a lot of choices and a lot of options. It's a very, very cool technical innovation that really, really makes for highly portable scopes. I mentioned Zen-based telescopes, and here this is where the actual function meets the form for the telescope, so that more of the telescope is actually serving double duty. So Mel Bartels, who's just like the a real vanguard in a lot of what we're doing right now at the Oregon Scope Works for sure, is pushing a lot of envelopes and a lot of boundaries and doing really, really innovative designs. And certainly, my most recent telescope, or I guess not the recent one, but one that I made a couple of years ago, was highly influenced by his designs. So the telescope on the left is a 30-inch aperture telescope. And you can stand on the ground and look through the eyepiece. And it's very, very minimal in terms of the parts. So you can see it does have some aluminum tubes, some aluminum struts, but the whole thing collapses down and is very highly portable. This is a 30-inch instrument. And if you look back, and if you remember back to the image from Herschel, right, for his 20-foot telescope, which was only an 18-inch aperture telescope. This is 30 inches that you can just huck in your car and take to a dark sky site. Now, Mel happens to live at a dark sky site, so he's got he just doesn't have to roll it very far from his garage. On the top right is Mel again. This is a similar design, and this is a 16-inch scope. And the main innovation here is that the whole thing folds up like a clamshell, which is just the coolest thing ever. And as you can imagine, this is obviously a very easy scope to move around. And this is 16 inches of aperture. He needs a chair to sit, to look through the 16-inch. Bottom right is my version of the predecessor to Mel's 16-inch, which was a 13-inch that he had at the time, called Zip Dob. And so the bottom right is my version of his Zip Dob. This is a 14-inch scope. And because I chose to make my mirror particularly fast, even faster than the 16-inch here, which is an f3, it became very difficult actually for me to clamshell it. So this one I can't actually fold up, but because it's so compact from a focal length standpoint, it also very easily fits into my car. And you can see, my telescope next to my the one that I had made in university, my yard cannon, which is the 8-inch f7. And so you can see that it's far shorter, but the aperture is nearly twice the diameter. So these are cases where, by combining the function and the form, you achieve portability because you don't really have any wasted space. So another kind of innovation, if you can call it that, in modern construction of scopes is the availability of drop shipped laser or water jet cut parts. So now you can design something in Fusion or SketchUp or whatever, and upload the design of a part or multiple parts and have them laser cut or water jet cut and then have them shipped to you. This allows you to make potentially very complicated designs with minimal fuss and muss, and you just get the part sent to you, and then it becomes a job of assembly. As an example here, this was something that I worked on, which was a pair of binoculars. Believe it or not, you can see the two lenses on the left-hand side image. You can see one of the lenses sort of in the top left corner, and then in the lower right corner you can see the opening for the second lens. So this is a pair of binoculars that uses an 80 millimeter pair of lenses. But the point of this image here is that the parts themselves, you can see there's a bunch of aluminum parts to this, and those were all designed and shipped to a fabricator that just punched out the parts and shipped them out. And while the parts on the right hand side with the holes in them, you can imagine that you could just drill those holes yourself. That's not a big deal, but once you get to the more complicated faceplate that you see on the left hand image, the parts can be complicated, and it can stretch your machining capabilities, especially if you don't have access to a machine shop. So having the ability to do this kind of thing really allows you to push the envelope in terms of what's possible. And I'll explain more about these binos in a sec, because it's actually a really, really cool story. So, which leads to, what I think is the biggest innovation, or biggest space that allows innovation to happen in constructing telescopes, and that's 3D printing. Because you can create very, very complex designs, you can very rapidly prototype parts and put stuff together effortlessly. There's an entire forum on Cloudy Nights. So Cloudy Nights is you're probably familiar with it, but in case you aren't, Cloudy Nights is an astronomy forum that's got all different sorts of discussion topics. And there's one discussion topic specifically related to 3D printed astronomy, which is where people are posting their designs for, you name it. It can be literally anything. So just to give you an idea of what some of these literally anythings are, the aluminum plates that we were looking at before that were drop shipped, this is the final product here on the right in orange. The orange parts are 3D printed parts. Obviously, the aluminum is visible. There's also black parts, which are also 3D printed. So this is basically a pair of binoculars that I was working from a design, and the design's on the left-hand side here, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the point is here, this is a fully functional pair of binoculars with 80 millimeter lenses and 2-inch that accepts arbitrary 2-inch eyepieces, so you can just barely see the eyepiece things up at the top. And the other cool thing is that this also has got secondary mirrors, so you can sort of see the secondary mirror in the bottom right hand corner. And the idea here is that you actually look down into these binoculars as opposed to looking through them. And that gives you the ability to point up more easily. So when you're pointed at the zenith, you're basically looking straight forward, right? Because you're looking through the eyepieces, through the 45 secondary, and out the lenses. So really, really cool design. And the design was made by a fellow named Robert Azimendi, who now has got a company called Analog Sky. And you too can print your own binoculars and make them with kits that he sells. And as a part of buying the kit, you get onto his community where where you can get help and feedback and whatnot for putting this together. And basically, he's got 2 different kinds of binoculars at the moment, and he's got a couple of other devices. He's got a solar one as well. His first one was called Magic, which is in the image here on the left. And actually, if you go to the website analogsky.co and look at the page, it actually, this is a video that is just so cool. And the small hands that you see on the right-hand side of the image, that's his daughter. And his daughter and his wife basically are showing the video of how to put this thing together, which is just the coolest thing ever. And so the magic binoculars are, if I remember correctly, I think they're 60mm binoculars. And so it's a smaller design, and it was his original design. And then the one that I built was called Heart, which is the 80mm objective. So really, really cool. And if you're interested in kind of dabbling in this, you should definitely check this out. I should point out, actually, I didn't say this before, but telescope making, you don't necessarily have to make your optics. So telescope making can use existing optics, and then you just build all the stuff around it to your particular needs. So in this case, I got these lenses from Surplus Shed, and the 45-degree secondaries from Alibaba, and the rest of the materials, I printed myself. So it depends on what you want to do as to whether or not you tackle the optics part of ATM. But there are lots of areas in which to innovate in here and kind of scratch your particular itch. So, however, if you're into going the whole enchilada, the telescope on the left, called Hadley, by Jonathan Kistner, is a really cool 3D printed telescope from soup to nuts. And with the exception of the optics, obviously, which you can buy or you can make. But here's an entire reflecting telescope. This is 4-inch, I think. And yeah, and you can download the design. The design is freely available, and you can print it yourself and put it together and off to the races. Now, I mentioned rapid prototyping. So, these are complete devices, but you can also use 3D printing to make specific parts to your telescope. So, these are a number of parts that I've made for my scope Artemis. On the sort of the top left of the two images, on the right-hand side, that's a new secondary hub, for supporting my secondary. You can see the wires that I use for spider vanes, which is a super effective way of holding your secondary and minimizing both weight and diffraction spikes. In the orange part that you see there is some prototypes that I was experimenting with to use to replace Teflon bearings with fluid motion control devices, which is something that another Oregon Scope Werks member is championing as a way of having more control over the altitude and azimuth motion of telescopes. And then in the lower right is my 3D design for an equatorial platform. And I've got an entire webpage, that talks about that design, but all the parts that you see in black are 3D printed parts. So, the actual sectors, to do the equatorial platform motion, the pivot and the rotation points, on the left-hand side there. So all of that was designed in 3D using Fusion and then printed. And it actually works really, really well. Very, very happy with the way that turned out. But the cool thing is that I could design it exactly to my specifications in terms of geometry. That's the ground ring to my existing telescope, and the base, and my specific latitude, which will affect the sizes and the geometry of the sectors. So all of this I could do in 3D design and then just send it to my printer to print out. Hugely empowering. There's another cool little project that I did called the Scotch Mac, which now is more formally known as Isla. And this was a fun little thing that I wanted to do. From Surplus Shed, you can get these optical kits for Maksutov telescopes and Cassegrain Maksutov telescopes. And every time they go in stock, they go out of stock within a day because they're immensely popular. And there are a number of designs around for for putting it together into a functioning telescope. But what I wanted to do was I looked at it and I go, man, that would just be so cool to fit in one of those tubes that Scotch bottles come in. And so for some curious reason, I happen to have a bunch of those lying around. And so I got the optics and kind of redesigned the 3D printed parts to fit into that Scotch tube. And so now I've got a functioning Max Sutov that's got like a really cool OTA. So that's about constructing telescopes. And as I said, you don't have to go, and deep dive into the optics. However, if you do want to deep dive into the optics, this next section is for you. And, one of the observations, that I'll make is that lenses continue to be very difficult to fabricate for amateurs. And part of the reason is because there are so many optical surfaces, right? If you had a single lens, that's two surfaces as opposed to, the single surface that you need to deal with a mirror. But if you're going to be going down the refractor path, you're probably going to want to have multiple lenses to try and make an apochromat, and it's just a very, very tough chore. And so I don't see a lot of people doing it. However, there are lots of advances in mirror making, and that's where I see a lot of innovation happening all the time. And by far, in my opinion, the biggest innovation in recent years has been thin meniscus mirrors that are exceedingly fast. This is, to me, the state of the art right now. And again, this is Mel Bartels, who's been the main champion for this. He'll say he got the idea from someone else, and that may be true, but the reality is that Mel is the one that's pushing the envelope here. And it certainly got me interested in the thin meniscus mirrors and slumping them, and so since then I've made mirrors, I've slumped mirrors for other people. And so lots of people are kind of jumping on this. And the main reason, frankly, is portability for the win. I mean, when you have a 16-inch mirror, which is what he's holding in his hand, that is 5/8 of an inch thick, that gives you a lot of opportunities. And if it's an f3, this is why he can have a 16-inch mirror that he needs a stool to sit on to look through, as opposed to a step stool to stand on to look through. And so these thin fast meniscus mirrors are really, really pushing the envelope of what people are able to do now with telescopes. So the main enabler of these thin meniscus mirrors are computer controlled kilns. And because to make the thin meniscus, you need to start with a piece of glass, and you slump it over a precisely created form. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this. One of the reasons, I guess I should have led with this, is one of the reasons that Dale asked me to give this presentation is he saw a talk that I gave back to the Royal Astronomical Society of Toronto about this whole odyssey of making that 14-inch mirror that I showed, or that 14-inch telescope that I showed earlier, and how it all comes together. So I talk in detail about how this whole fabrication process works, but in like a 10-second nutshell, the idea is you can put a piece of glass into a kiln and you place it over top of a precisely made form. And if you have the temperature profile just right, the glass just deforms onto the form and takes the shape of whatever it is that it's slumped on that, and that process is called slumping. Now, lots of implementation details here, including how to control the temperature, which has to be very, very precisely controlled, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that the mirror doesn't melt, obviously. So you want it to just very gently slump over the form. You also want to make sure that you don't bake in a lot of stress into the mirror. If you do that, or if you heat the mirror too quickly, you end up with what you see in the lower left, which is lots of broken glass. So I've exploded a number of mirrors that, because I've kind of tried to push the envelope in terms of how quickly I can slump a mirror and how many mirrors I can do at one time, because I have a big kiln. The kiln is the big silver thing that you see in the right-hand diagram. And the computer controller is the small box with the LED display. But the silver thing, is just a ceramic kiln. So nothing special really. It's all about the computer control. And so there's a lot of wasted space if you're slumping a single mirror in there. And so I was trying to push the envelope in terms of how many mirrors I can get in there and successfully slump at once, because a number of people are trying to replicate Mel's 16-inch f3 currently. And so there's like an ongoing project where, a whole bunch of people are all starting from the same slumped glass and then trying to outdo each other on how quickly they can get the mirrors fabricated. But yeah, the point is that, I was trying to push the envelope in terms of how many mirrors I can slump at once. Clearly that experiment failed. And so you kind of live and learn. This is Mel's 30-inch just after slumping. I think actually after slumping and kind of initial coarse grinding to smooth it out a little bit. But this is a 30-inch mirror here. And again, you can see how thin it is. Mel is on the call, and I can't remember exactly how thick the 30 is. I think it might be 3/4 of an inch thick, maybe less. Anyhow, but still 30 inches, it's just like it's crazy thin for 30 inches. Now, you notice that there's a mirror behind it. He actually did 2 mirrors at once and was actually polishing and figuring these mirrors simultaneously. So he would do one for a little bit, then flip it out and put the other one in and do the other one for a little bit, and back and forth, and then ultimately produced super high quality figures on both of them, and ended up selling one of them, not to me. So, a thing about making mirrors. You can make a mirror by hand, in your dress slacks and loafers, like the original pictures. But it's really only practical up to about 16 inches in diameter. Once you get bigger than 16, even a thin meniscus mirror, that's a lot of glass to push around, and it gets very, very tiring. And the friction is high enough that it's just impractical to do. And so many mirror makers, that are making these mirrors that are much larger than 16-inch, typically are using machines to do the grinding, the polishing, and ultimately the figuring. So the machines basically are taking the grunt work out of the mirror making process. And this is combined with precisely calibrated pitch laps, which allow you to very, very precisely tune where the figuring action is at any point in time, so that as you're changing your mirror from a sphere to a paraboloid, you can use these different shaped laps to kind of control where you're going to be correcting the mirror to get the ultimate result. Here's just a couple of examples. So the Mirrormatic is the poster child for mirror making machines. There are plans that have been available online for, I don't know, probably 20 years. Oh, it looks like Zip Archive of deprecated group discussions from 2000 to 2019. So like around 2000 was when the Mirrormatic was created. And you can download plans for different sized versions of it and build a mirror making machine yourself. On the right-hand side is Mel with his mirror making machine. As you can see, it's just like this gold-plated Cadillac mirror making machine that Mel is just a perfectionist, and it is a beautiful looking machine. And it allows him, but I mean, he was building it with a very specific purpose in mind, because he's got a plan for how he wants to make his mirrors. And he's gone from 13 to 16 to 24 to 30, and ultimately he wants to get up to a 42-inch mirror. And and so he's built his machine so that it can scale up to that size. Another aspect to mirror making is silvering. So typically, if you were to buy a commercial telescope, the mirror is alumnized, possibly with enhanced coatings to kind of get you in the 92 to 94% reflectivity range. And and the cool thing about alumnized mirrors is that they almost never give out. Like you rarely would have to recoat your mirror unless it's severely abused. However, it's not cheap. And so if you start to fabricate your own mirrors, especially mirrors, like the size of, the 30-inch that Mel's holding, that's going to be very, very expensive to send out and get alumnized. Secondarily, if you go with silver actually has better reflectivity than even enhanced aluminized coatings. And so silver, will get you a better image. And then the other reason why silvering is starting to see a renaissance is, when people are spending, hundreds of hours on these more exotic mirrors, you don't want to risk shipping it out to an alumnizer and have your hard work broken. So, by doing the silvering yourself, which is frankly the way it used to be done, you're in complete control over your destiny, and it's far, far cheaper. It'll cost you tens of dollars, if that, to silver a mirror. Now, the downside is that silvering tarnishes. And we're still refining the process for how to achieve a fairly long-lasting coating. No question, you'll have to silver far more often than you need to alumnize. But the process now, we've got a pretty good process down. And, in the course of an afternoon, you can strip the old coating off, resilver it, and coat it with a special chemical that will preserve it for at least a year, if not longer. Some have gotten a silver coating going almost 2 years. And then you just have to resilver it every year or so. So you could imagine just doing it as a part of your seasonal thing. Before your season starts, you just resilver your mirror. Costs you like $10, and Bob's your uncle. And and a lot of this is actually made even simpler by a company called Angel Gilding, which sells these spray silvering kits, including all the chemistry. And so it's just a very, very straightforward process. Now, there is a lot of devil in the details, and it takes several tries to get a reasonably good coating. It's very hard to get a flawless coating, but this is what we're trying to do. I've silvered, I don't know, probably 20 times now, and I'm just getting to the point where I'm getting flawless coatings. But, there are some tricks that you need to know, but we have an entire web page devoted to how to spray silver a telescope mirror, and the link is in the presentation. So now I want to just quickly pivot to testing techniques. How am I doing for time, guys? I see I've been talking for 46 minutes. So when do you want me to stop? I'll just keep going. So for testing, this is an important aspect of when you're making your own optics. How do you know when your optics are good enough? Back in the day, the workhorse test was the Foucault test, and it was used for testing all these traditional sized mirrors.
Okay, Tom, you got about 15 minutes more.
Sweet. Okay, that'll work out well. Perfect. So yeah, the Foucault test, was used for, traditional mirrors that were, on the order of F6, F7 or F8, or even longer. And served their purpose really, really well. However, when you start looking at these fast mirrors, F4 and lower, or F3, or in my case F2.6, Foucault just can't cut it because the zones are so close together that it's really, really hard to get an accurate read. And so the modern way of doing it, is to use Ronchi tests. And Ronchi tests are kind of a diffraction sort of test where you use a very, very fine grating and a light source that projects that grating onto your mirror. And basically the shape of the shadows allows you to assess the optical shape of your mirror. And um, and so the mirror on the left is my 14-inch. And what I should have done actually is shown a before and after of this image, because I had recently refigured the mirror and to try and improve its high power performance. And if you see this Ronchi image next to the comparable Ronchi image from from like a year and a half prior to that, it's like night and day in terms of the smoothness of the mirror. So aside from the Ronchi test being able to tell you the quality of your figure, it can just also give you a very, very good assessment of the quality of your surface. If your surface is rough or if you have scratches, it will become readily apparent in the Ronchi test. But the real innovation here is a Ronchi calculator that Mel has created that basically allows you to upload an image that you would take of your figure, and you input a few mirror parameters, and it will assess what your Ronchi image should look like, and then compare it to what your Ronchi image does look like, and tell you what you need to do next. And which is just like, it's so empowering. It blows you away, because it's very, very fast to do. And when you're getting into the finer details of of the figure, and getting to that last little bit of perfection, it's an exquisitely sensitive test. Even though in the past naysayers would have said it's not that sensitive. But you can see sort of an illustration of its sensitivity in the two images down below at the bottom right. So the black and white image is an actual null, a dual pass auto collimation null test. And which is a long-winded way of saying it's a mirror test, where if your mirror is perfect, your lines are jail bar straight. And you can see the lines where that are circled by the red ovals, they bow out slightly. So there's still a slight imperfection in this mirror. And the image on the left, with the red bullseyes, is part of the Ronchi calculator, and this is the equivalent null test that the mirror is showing, or sorry, that the calculator is computing based on the image that you've uploaded. And if you look very, very carefully, so there is the bold smallest red ring. And then just between it and the first ring after that, you can see the two lines bowing inwards slightly. And while it's very, very subtle, when you see it, you can't unsee it, right? I mean, it's there. And for your mirror to be perfect, those lines too need to be jail bar straight. And so the very cool thing is that this DPAC test, from which that black and white image, is made, requires this very specific test setup that's not necessarily easily accessible. Whereas this Ronchi null image, on the lower left, is very, very easy to generate just by taking a simple Ronchi picture. And this allows you to very, very rapidly iterate on your final figure and get to, ultimately a perfect mirror, or as perfect as you want it to be. Another area of intense activity is bath interferometry, which is another way of testing your mirrors using lasers. And this is a very, very precise mechanism for evaluating your mirror. And the software image that you can see on the top right shows you the type of data that you can get out from it. It will tell you the Strel value of your mirror, which is, the closer you are to 1, the more perfect your mirror is. It can also show you a 3-dimensional profile of your mirror, which is the thing that you see with the light and dark blue images. And also, your wavefront error. So it does a whole bunch of computations on your thing. But the cool thing is that you can get a relatively accurate representation of the surface of your mirror, which the Ronchi can't easily do. So this definitely has an advantage over that. especially when you're looking at astigmatism. You'll be able to see astigmatism very, very quickly in a bath interferometry result. The downside to bath is that it is freakishly difficult to get set up properly, and it's subject to air currents and vibrations in your house, and like all sorts of things that make it very, very difficult to get the precise results that it promises to give. So, I'm excited to try it out. I do have all of the stuff to build one, but I haven't done it yet. And I'd like to try it out, but frankly, I'm a little bit nervous about how finicky it is to get set up correctly. But those that have got it streamlined, swear by it as kind of their go-to test. Other techniques, I'd mentioned the DPAC, the double pass autocollimation. It's a great test. It's a null test, which means, straight lines are good. But the downside to it is that you need a large optical flat to do the test. And if you're doing an 18-inch mirror, it's very, very hard to get an 18 or 20-inch flat that's optically flat. So that one's a tough one. It's better for smaller mirrors. The Ross null is another null test that requires, in this case, a very special lens and a relatively precise optical bench. But people do successfully use it as well. And again, the benefit of a null test is what you want is straight bars, because your eye can see when something isn't quite straight. Whereas, if you looked at that original Ronchi image on the left here, just by looking at it, you can't just immediately tell where your errors are. Hartman is an interesting test that's similar to Ronchi in terms of its simplicity, and it allows the entire mirror surface to be profiled. But the trick here is that instead of a grating with multiple lines on it, you need very, very precise a precise dot screen, with highly calibrated dot positions, which can be done now, with the advent of laser cutters. And so, this promises to be a really good test, because similar to the bath, you can get a 3D mirror profile. So that's kind of a long discussion of, some of the major advances in kind of modern ATMing. So now I just want to spend a few minutes talking about boundaries and where I see innovation going in the next little while. So the first is aggressive PSI, and by this I literally mean pounds per square inch. There's an interesting leaderboard up on cloudy nights where they're keeping track of the pounds per square inch for telescopes. And by that, the pounds is how heavy your telescope is, and the square inch is literally the square of your aperture inches. And obviously the goal is to try and make as big a telescope as light as possible. Mel's 30-inch is 100 pounds-ish, I believe. And I think it's at the top of the leaderboard. I haven't actually looked recently, so I may be lying there. But there's people are always interested in making things faster and lighter. So that's a boundary that I think is always going to be there. And yeah, so enough said about that. Now, fabrication and optimizing the fabrication techniques, I think there's still lots of room for innovation here. Everything from making kilns that are more special purpose for astronomical slumping. As you saw in my kiln, there's a lot of wasted space, which is prompting me to try and slump multiple mirrors at once. But really you only need a kiln that's like 10 inches high, and so you can save a lot of power by making a kiln smaller, or conversely, for the same level of power, you can make a kiln diameter much, much bigger. And so you'll be able to make bigger diameter slumps with still modest amounts of power requirements. On the slumping side itself, making these forms that the mirrors are slumped against, there's still, I think, room for optimization. And I think 3D printing is going to come into play here. One of the things that I want to do is play around with using 3D printing to create something that I can then cast the form that goes into the kiln on so that I can get a super precise cast. And so but I'm limited in the size of things that I can print on my printer, and I've just got other projects on the go. The machines themselves, I've showed a couple of images of machines. People are constantly innovating on the machines and how to make them better. More torque, with smaller footprints so that they don't become, these big, huge things, because most people, frankly, don't have that kind of space to dedicate for their hobby. And then another really cool thing is I'd shown how these laps can be customized based on where you want the polishing action to happen. And I think that there's still lots of room for innovation there to more precisely tune how your pitch laps look, as you're doing your final figuring to get to the shape that you want it to be. Another area of innovation, I believe, is in the smart telescope space. I mean, we saw those images that one of your members was showing. Sorry, I can't remember your name now. That one of your members was showing at the beginning, through his smart telescope, and that's just so cool and so amazing that such a small device, relatively small, inexpensive device can do that. Imagine if you could do that with a 12-inch scope and yet still have a relatively cheap smart telescope that's fully digital. This is something that's one of my personal hobby horses that I would really, really like to make. And in fact, I'd mentioned, a bunch of us are making the 16-inch F3s. Mine, I do intend to make as a fully digitally enabled telescope. And I think that would just be like the coolest thing ever because, as you know, just outside of Toronto, my skies suck. And so if I can, put a filter on and yet get incredibly deep images, just, with relatively modest exposure times, that would just be the coolest thing ever. And then another area that I think is going to be pushing boundaries is this whole AI space. Everything from using generative AI to provide expert guidance on how to make a particular telescope or how to solve a particular problem, to even going to the point of looking at, let's say, Ronchi images and saying, okay, your mirror is now 50% parabolized and you need to deepen the center, or oh no, you're starting to turn your edge and so you need to do this, that, or the other thing. And this is something that I've actually been experimenting with, is to create a mirror expert that will be trained on a whole series of Ronchi images, which you can just generate through software. So, I can generate 25,000 of these images that show different offsets and different levels of parabolization and different kinds of defects, different compound defects, and just train the model on these images and say, okay, this image is for such and such a, parabolization, and it has a turned down edge. So that, when you then train that model and then give it a Ronchi image, you should be able to say, what's wrong with this mirror? And it will say, okay, you're 90% figured, but you have a turned down edge, that kind of thing. And, frankly, the technology to do this is here now. And which is why I'm kind of exploring this as kind of a side project, because you can train what are called multimodal LLMs, which are sort of like imagine ChatGPT, which originally was just trained on text, but you can also upload images and train the combination. This is what I said multimodal. It should be multimodal. So that you can combine images with descriptive text, and then that way you can train the model to analyze images. So this is a really, really cool thing that you can do now, and it's relatively cheap. You can't do it for free, unfortunately. I've been trying to do it using the free versions of some of these LLMs, and unfortunately, it doesn't have the horsepower to do it. But for relatively small dollars, I can buy some more compute and try and push this one over the edge, and I'd like to see how well this will work. So I've just collected a bunch of links here, just so that it's in the presentation. If the presentation is shared, or obviously it'll be on the video. So these are just some key useful links, if you want to poke around in this space. And the two YouTube links are just the links to my earlier presentations if you're interested in more details about the actual slumping process and the whole journey that I went through for my Artemis telescope. And I just want to kind of leave with this quote, which has been mentioned many times, but I don't think anyone knows who actually said it first. So I'll just, attribute it to an anonymous amateur. The best telescope is the one that you will use most often. And why this is kind of apropos to ATM is that ATM is a time-consuming thing. And when you're making a telescope, you're not using a telescope unless you've got multiple telescopes. And so then you're in a good position because you could be making something, but at the same time, taking advantage of dark skies and whatnot to to get your observing in. But this is kind of the slippery slope for ATM, is that sometimes you end up becoming a maker and not necessarily an observer. So just keep that in mind, and I'll just stop right there.
Right, do we have any questions for Tom? We do. What do you got?
We had a picture of a Dutch travel telescope. Can you bring that up?
Yes.
please?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, you want to see the Dutch travel telescope? Sure. There you go.
That needs a Transformers logo on it.
There are a number of scopes that you'll look. If you look for travel telescope on cloudy nights, you'll obviously find this one, but you'll find a number of other ones. People have, all wanted to make something that they can, fit into a small box that can fit under the seat in front of them to take traveling.
How do you solve or what determines the minimum thickness of a slumped large diameter mirror?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The quick answer is trial and error. We've been just trying to make them thinner and thinner, and the 30-inch Mel's 30-inch was on the floppier side of things. So I think he would say that maybe that one was a little bit too thin. It just becomes difficult to work with. And so you need to take extra care, with the floppiness from that standpoint. It's difficult to test, and then ultimately it becomes difficult to support. So, he's had to create, innovative ways of supporting the mirror. What some people are considering doing is coring their mirror so that, there's, a space to allow you to mount it from the back in the middle of the mirror that's covered by the central obstruction. And that's a way to kind of distribute the load a little bit. So I think Mel's got a formula somewhere on his website for for what kind of the sweet spot is and what becomes a little bit too thin. But right now it's still a little bit of a trial and error. But certainly, so for example, my 14-inch is 5/8 thick. The 16-inch is 5/8 thick, and both of those are plenty stiff. So, and that gives you, lots of weight savings. And so, while you might be intrigued or might want to push the envelope and see if you can make a 1/4-inch thick mirror, I'm not sure that there would be much benefit to doing that, but someone might try.
Any talk about creating a miniaturized amateur active mount or active mounting system?
Well, I've certainly seen people ask questions about it, and that would be super cool too. So that would be one reason why you would make a 1/4 inch thick mirror, is that you could start to do adaptive optics. That question comes up a lot on cloudy nights. Another question that comes up on cloudy nights is multi-mirror optics as well. And the general consensus on that is that don't do that. But yeah, adaptive optics would be a cool direction to go.
There is a company here in Michigan. What are they called?
Plane wave.
Yes.
Have they, I mean, they're a company that makes telescopes, I think in the 12-inch to 1 meter range.
Yes.
Big and larger.
Yep.
Um,
Larger. Yep.
Do you think that they have been interested in slumping or other aspects of the stuff you've been
Well,
talking?
they use, I think they typically do cellular mirrors, right? So they're not solid. They're basically, they've got a lot of airspace in them. The Oregon Scope Works is kind of an offshoot of another organization called the Alt-Az Initiative. And that group was created ostensibly to try and make it easy or cost effective to make 1 mirror class telescopes. Sorry, 1 meter class telescopes. And and they have an annual conference, and certainly the plane wave guy has been there. I've been to one of the conferences, and the plane wave guy was there, so he's actively involved in this kind of thing. I don't know that they slump. I think their thing typically is the cellular mirrors. But maybe they're experimenting with slumping too. Can't say for sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for him. First of all, I sent him a private chat message, so hopefully he'll get it from Bob Berta. The other thing, about 3 weeks to 4 weeks ago, a university just announced that they now have developed a flat lens for refractors, which I think is phenomenal. They use a Fresnel principle. The problem with the Fresnel flat screen is it only does one of the colors. You can't do RGB, but they have developed a process. They can now do RGB, a Fresnel lens flat, and equal to the best apochromatic refractor. So I'm wondering if that might be something you've heard about, any follow-up on that.
I have not, but that sounds intensely cool. Yeah, that sounds really, really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out of universities, and as I say, there are kids that are interested in ATM, which is really gratifying, because it's sometimes sad, when you think that ATMing is like an old man's thing. And it's great, that younger people are also doing this sort of thing. So yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
God rest the soul of Russell Porter.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, this has been great. Lot more than I thought we were going to hear. Thank you so much. It sounds like this is a very vibrant field. I thought it had kind of almost died out decades ago, but wow. Thank you again for your presentation.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, so our next meeting is next week, April 17th at Macomb Community College, South Campus, 12 Mile and Hayes. Our next star party is 4th Saturday, April 19th at Stargate, and several of us head to the Redcoat Tavern after this for gastronomy after astronomy, Woodward north of 13 Mile. And with that, good night and clear skies, everyone. Lights. Drop down. Bye, everyone.